Welcome to the Home Business Podcast with Richard Captain Henderson, publisher of Home Business Magazine, and Sherilyn Colleen, managing editor. This how-to show helps you successfully operate your home-based business.
Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Podcast. I'm Richard Captain Henderson, your skipper at Home Business TV.
And I'm Sherilyn Colleen, your co-host.
Let's secure, foresee, and get underway. An entrepreneur's world, particularly with a startup, can be 24/7. But can you really actually work less and be more productive?
Can you change your business habits and tap into a mindfulness that increases your productivity?
Our podcast guest today, Jessica Higgins, says yes, that you can actually even go on vacation and really be on vacation. That as entrepreneurs, that we too can create our own culture of productivity.
Jessica Higgins is an attorney, business executive, author, public speaker, and chief operating officer with Gaping Void Culture Design Group.
So greetings, Jessica Higgins. Say hello to our podcast audience.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for coming on our show.
So you're dialing in, connecting in from the beautiful city of Miami?
Yes, Miami Beach, where we are on spring break, apparently, according to everyone else.
Am I too old to go on spring break?
Never too old.
I'm not too old.
No.
Okay. Okay, all engines ahead standard. At the end of today's show, we'll share with you our best home-based business tip. Today's tip: what is the most underclaimed business deduction that you can take on your taxes? Stay tuned, and we'll give you the answer at the end of today's show.
Now, unfortunately, an entrepreneur's world is too often about working 24/7. It becomes a culture for a business owner. But Jessica Higgins, what you're actually saying is that by working less, you will be more productive. Can you please explain?
Sure. So our team works in culture design. So we're constantly diving into the research of what a great organizational culture actually is. And what we have found is that Harvard researchers have shown that these high stress environments that we're accustomed to, they have short-term returns on productivity, but over the long term, we just burn out. You see employees disengaging. You see 70% more accidents in these high stress environments. You have more health problems. One study even found that there's a direct relationship between cardiovascular disease and having a bad boss. So you can literally have a heart attack if you have a bad boss. So how do we turn that information inward to ourselves? Well, as entrepreneurs, I would say that if you're any good at what you do, you are the worst boss that you could possibly be for yourself. You're always pushing harder, trying harder, pushing more, grinding. So in the world of culture, we say you're creating one of these high stress environments. So if you want to switch your mental state to one that's really in it for the long haul as an entrepreneur, you have to start thinking about things like wellness and work-life balance and shutting down, because grinding as hard as you can is going to give you a bit of, short-term productivity, but entrepreneurs can't work off short-term productivity. We have years before we can even create, a good return for many of us. So we have to really be focused on the long haul.
Wait, so I like that. You got to look at yourself as a boss.
Exactly.
Almost go in as a split personality and say, separate yourself as a boss. Are you being too hard on yourself? That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, I think there's that voice inside of many of our heads that could, if we put a microphone into that voice, it would just sound worse than anything anybody else could ever say to us. So it's all about emotional self-management and actualization and really recognizing when that voice is in your head. And it's funny, I just listened to a podcast from Seth Godin today about how writer's block isn't real. Writer's block is really just a state of confusion. So if we find ourselves in a place where we are confused, that's that trigger for us in our head to say, okay, stop, take a moment, go do something that you love, and just let yourself actually release. And then it's no different than when you're in the shower and you have a great idea. Those great ideas will come to you. So it's really, time management, but more so just self-management. So managing our own boss inside of us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I like that's a good way of looking at it. So you got a boss running around in your head, and sometimes they become taskmasters or dictators that start to run amok, because if you're not thinking about it, you're being guided by deadlines and things you got to do and tasks. If you don't think about what that boss is going to do inside of you, he's just going to keep lashing you to the deck to get those things done. So sounds like it all starts with some good self-awareness.
Absolutely. And, these great organizational cultures that we design for, it's not just like the soft and fluffy stuff, it actually creates hard ROI. So we find that if a really great organizational customer or culture receives 2 times the performance that's viewed by the customer, so customers report 2 times the service. So you're providing better service to your customers. We also see 4 times ROI internally because people are more productive, they're more aligned, and they need less micromanagement and less hand-holding. So if you have a small team or you have a big team or it's really just yourself, think of yourself in design your life in a deliberate way that's going to achieve what these great organizations are doing, right? Why not? Because that's how we can disrupt those great organizations.
Well, you brought up a good point. We were talking about ourselves being bosses, but most home-based entrepreneurs work with other people. In some ways, they're leading. They're contractors. They, might have some part-time people working for them or working in joint ventures with others. So, most are more than just a boss to themselves. And so, how are you being perceived by the people you work for too? That could become critical.
Absolutely. And, we see culture fails, and it's no different than if you have 1 employee or 1 million employees. Culture fails are when the bad stuff on the inside leaks to the outside and it becomes perceived by your customers. And that's going to create a fiasco for any business, and especially in entrepreneurship where you're relying on every one of your customers. The losses can be really even greater for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, one link in the chain can really mess things up. Well, so you have to change some perspectives, Jessica, and habits to change your mindset on making productivity easier. What are some ways that people listening can change their habits to tap into this mindfulness?
Sure. I think that entrepreneurs have 2 main resources that we have to manage. One is finances and the other is our time. So if you're listening to this and you are already an entrepreneur, I'm going to assume you have a pretty good lock on your finances. So let's just focus on the time. Time management is all about allocating yourself correctly. So for me, I spend 2 hours per day continuous learning. I spend 1 hour per day on physical fitness, and I spend the rest of my hours on labor. So my continuous learning can be done. I use a lot of personal hacks. So I live here in Miami Beach. My continuous learning can be listening to a podcast from HBR, laying in the sand. My continuous learning can be going on a walk, listening, to the news. So just take that time management and really deliberately design your life around your own success principles to ensure that you're in it for the long haul. And by that, I mean you're constantly learning, because entrepreneurs have to constantly be learning.
I want to stop you just 1 second, because you really pulled out a good nugget there for our audience. So for time management, working in, which would typically go to the end of the line of things you juggle in for the day, which is your learning, you're saying to look at tasks that, whether you're driving in the car or working out or taking a walk, and merge that in with an audio podcast, particularly a podcast, and that you can take care of that learning, so you don't have to block an hour out in your day and sit in your office and learn. You can work that in with tasks that the other tasks, and do a little time management on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or a business book. One of the most common things I hear is I have no time to read books anymore. And the truth is, we're moving from a visual environment to really a visual sharing environment. So nuggets of information are going from long to small, and I think these long form communications are moving into the auditory space. So we have Siri, and we have podcasts and audiobooks, and you just meet people where they already are within their environment, right? So if you can't physically stop and read, you can be multitasking. I clean my dishes and I'm learning, so I'm listening to a book that I wanted to pick up, something of that nature. But it's funny when you say the scheduling, because my scheduling order is learning, physical wellness, and then work. So the second thing I do is I block in an hour of my day into a gym class every single day. And my company knows about my gym class. And this was a little disruptive at first to everyone, to have your gym class be their most important meeting of the day. But now when I don't have my gym class,
I like those priorities.
Yeah, my coworkers will notice that I'm really stressed out. And I actually was recently in Las Vegas, and one of my coworkers said to me, "Jessica, go to the gym," because it was just clear that I hadn't gotten it in. So if you work out, it gives you an adrenaline rush. You have positive endorphins. You feel more motivated, And it just gives you that reset. It's almost like a mental hypnosis, just to reset, get your blood flowing. So I schedule mine in the morning so my blood's flowing, and that gets me pumped up and excited to where when I sit down at my desk, I'm ready to go. There's not that lag time that you experience where a lot of people will show up to work, kind of play on Facebook, kind of check some emails.
That sounds like me.
Stretch a
And
little.
an hour has passed.
I gotta change my workout till the morning. That's a good thing. I'm late in the afternoon. I don't know. I'm just making excuses. That's a good point. Hey, before moving on to our next topic, I'd like to highlight this show's sponsor, Downline Builders Network, DBN. The DBM company helps build your network marketing downline. 100% automated, free postcards and hot leads each month. Pre-enroll now to lock in your position. For more information, call 866-722-5363 or visit mailpostcardsfromhome.com or our podcast website for more information on sponsors.
Now, taking a vacation is a tough time for entrepreneurs, especially, and one of the biggest challenges about work-life balance. We find ourselves on vacation, but not really on vacation. Jessica, how can you really shut off, especially if you're running a company that isn't ever shutting off?
Sure. So I think that what we can do is take from big companies, even if we're small companies, we don't have to act like one-man bands or even small bands. Big companies it's totally acceptable to send an out-of-office reply. You know, I get out-of-office replies from our client over at Microsoft that say, "Hi, sorry, I'm at Burning Man. Unless you're more important than Burning Man, contact this person or I'll talk next week," right? So you can never overlook the power of humanity in business. So just setting up an out-of-office reply that's really human can set a new cultural norm both in your organization and for your customers that you serve. Because if who doesn't want to work with a company that allows you to go to Burning Man? That's really cool. And
I want to have a podcast on your experiences at Burning Man. I've heard a lot of things.
And her raves.
So I've actually never been, but I can get you set up with somebody who's been, if you want to go into that podcast.
It's fascinating. Running a home business from Burning Man.
I know a few doctors who do that, actually. A lot of medical issues there. You can have a big medical business at Burning Man. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I know you work in culture change, Jessica. So when it comes to changing culture, what can entrepreneurs do to create better culture for themselves and in particularly their teams?
Sure. There are two really main things that I really push for all of our clients. And one we kind of touched on, it's the power of communication. And the second one is the power of meetings. So when I run my statistical analysis of 40 best practices inside organizational cultures, I find a strong correlation in your company between the productivity of your meetings and 7 other metrics at work, right? From how we interact with our coworkers to, time management, getting things done throughout the day. And meetings are that one area that can really drive us insane if they're not done correctly. So rule number 1 is if it can be done in an email, do it in an email. Rule number 2, keep it to 30 minutes or less. If that sounds crazy, start with an hour or less. But we hack our meetings. We keep them super productive. Meetings are ways for us to bring diverse mindsets together and come up with solutions. There's no reason to do this in person.
Can I stop you a little bit on the meetings there? Because a lot of home-based entrepreneurs are running their meetings from like a Zoom broadcast or a Skype. They're not actually meeting face-to-face with the people in the meetings. Any particular tips when you're doing a video connection like that?
Yeah, we're on a Zoom link right now. You set up that cultural norm of this is our time to focus on each other so we can get this out of the way and move on. So you're not multitasking during this time. You're not on Facebook, you're not on your phone, you're super connected. And when you super connect during these collaborative times, it's just about understanding that time is our most valuable resource. So we're going to use each other's really, really important 30 minutes together, because together that could be, hours of our lives in the best possible way. And we commit to that. And it can have profound impact on your daily life, because there is nothing more depressing than sitting through a useless meeting. It just sets the tone for the rest of your day of talking about nothing, not getting anything done, and having no action steps.
Yeah, I was in the military before. We had plenty of, I know where you're coming from on that. So yes, death by meeting. And it's also death by PowerPoint. I like this thing on meetings. So say, you've got a home-based entrepreneur here, and they haven't really set up meetings, but they have people they work with. Would you recommend once a week, have a meeting with your team, even if you don't really have something to talk about, but just to make that connection, keeping it once a week?
Sure. So we actually work with the Department of Defense. So thank you for the tip. I'm going to write that down after this. But there are these success principles in one of my mastermind groups that say that you should connect for 15 minutes and just discuss what you're doing throughout the day. It's my personal opinion, having done this myself, that it depends on the organization and the needs. So if we're a really complex business with a lot of moving parts, we have a high trust level and we just rely on each other to get stuff done. And honestly, a lot of us don't know what other people are doing. We just know that there's an outcome and we're trying to get there. So for us, a check-in is like not as useful. If you're in an organization that, everybody is doing similar things or same things, yeah, check-ins are super helpful. We just get on the phone, we go, this is where I'm at, this is where you're at, what do you need from me? And, it provides that simple helpfulness. So, every Monday at 10 a.m., you're going to get that check-in where you get like a save. The mastermind recommends doing these every single day. We actually drop them down to once a week because it wasn't, like I said, we're all about meeting hacks, and it wasn't useful on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So we just cut it out. But it's definitely something to try, but just keep it really, really short, because if you're wasting an hour of everyone's time and 5 days a week, that's 5 hours a week. And so entrepreneurs, all we have is money and time. So we've got to grind and utilize that correctly so that we can shut off. And I think that's the issue, is we're looking for those time hacks where we can find our shut off point.
I like that, time hacks. Well, Jessica Higgins, you've been super productive in this podcast, and we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I have a little bit of time. Thanks for being such a great guest. Do you have any final points you'd like to share with our audience?
I do. So I mentioned a mastermind. There's one that I'm a part of called Genius Network, and it's run by a man named Joe Polish. And he says that if you were racing a horse, you had this $1 million racehorse, how would you treat this racehorse? He says, treat yourself like $1 million racehorse, because you as the entrepreneur, that's what you really are. You're this $1 million racehorse, right? So you wouldn't feed your racehorse McDonald's, let your racehorse hang out on the couch watching television. You would be, out keeping this racehorse in prime condition. And I think that's where a lot of my personal ideas about, a continuous learning and wellness have come from, but it's over and over again, it's being proven by research. So Arianna Huffington is on this mission to get people to sleep 8 hours a night, because she saw this burnout long before Harvard Business School ever reported on it. She said, I see people burning out, I see people pushing themselves too hard. If you're really in this for the long haul and you want to be that $1 million racehorse, think of yourself as that, and everything that you do, everything that you eat, everything that the people you surround yourself with on a daily basis who are influencing your thoughts, and just keep yourself in prime condition so that you can just go out and change the world.
So there's some good perspectives there. You got a boss running around, you've got to look at yourself as a racehorse, and you got to kind of step back and see what you're doing and make it work better. Well, thanks for being such a great guest on the Home Business Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on our show.
Okay, the answer to today's home business tip. What are some of the most underclaimed business deductions you can take on your taxes? Training and reading publications. We talked a little bit about that earlier in the podcast. If you take classes, attend seminars, or purchase books or reading materials to help with your business, all of these expenses can be deducted on your tax return.
To learn more about Jessica Higgins, visit jessicahiggins.co or visit our podcast website for more information.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Home Business Podcast. Share your feedback with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at our website, homebusinessmag.com.
Visit the website for information on advertising. Subscribe free to our newsletter. Please visit our sponsors. For more information, visit homebusinessmag.com or the Home Business Expo at homebusinessexpo.com.
I'm Richard Captain Henderson saying anchors away.
And I'm Sherilyn Colleen. We'll talk with you soon. Until then,
make it a great home-based biz day.